Hello everyone. I bet you're watching this video to relax your mind and drift off to sleep. So if you enjoy it, don't hesitate to like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, let me know where you're from and what time you're watching. Are you ready? The exciting story begins right here.
Story 1. On a September night in 2009, a family of 6 settled in for what they thought would be a peaceful evening. The children were tucked into bed and good nights were exchanged. But for this family, the sunrise would never come. A man with sinister motives broke into their home, and what followed was nothing short of a brutal massacre. The bloodshed was so extreme, so horrific, that it would forever be known as the bloodbath in Beeson. Even the seasoned investigators were left shaken by the carnage they found. And soon you'll understand why. This story brings us to Beeson, a tiny town about 200 miles from Chicago, tucked away in the Illinois. Beeson has a population of just around 200 people, making it feel like a quiet, forgotten spot surrounded by farmland and rolling hills. And at the center of our story are 2 families, the G family and the Constant family, both of whom called Beeson their home in the late 1990s. Now let's get to know Rick G first. He was known for his strong work ethic and never-give-up attitude. Early in his career, he worked for his stepfather's construction company in Lincoln, Illinois, the nearest town with all the essentials: schools, Walmart, restaurants, and even a small airport. It was the go-to place for people from the smaller towns when they needed to get stuff done. Rick's stepdad, Pudge, and his mom, Judy, lived in Lincoln too. 4 years, Rick hustled hard, picking up construction gigs wherever he could, and saving every penny to build a better future for himself and his daughter, Nicole G. His dedication finally paid off when he bought property on the edge of Beeson. And instead of sticking with his stepdad's company, he started his own business, which he called G Construction. He snagged a ranch-style home with a 2-car detached garage, an above-ground pool, and plenty of farmland for keeping chickens and other animals. But owning a business came with its costs, so Rick decided to rent out a room in his home. That's when Ruth Constant entered the scene, moving in with her 2 little kids, 3-year-old Justina and 1-year-old Dylan Constant. Initially, Ruth became Rick's tenant, but it didn't take long for sparks to fly between them. Ruth was a warm-hearted woman known for her outgoing personality and sense of humor, and Rick was the perfect match for her. As their bond grew stronger, Ruth discovered she was pregnant. In 1997, they tied the knot, with Rick at 34 and Ruth at 27. Not long after, they welcomed a baby boy, Austin, and their home was bustling with life. A year later, they celebrated the arrival of a baby girl, Jessica G., filling their hearts with more joy. Unfortunately, that joy was short-lived as they learned that little Jessica was born with a serious neurological condition, leaving her with disabilities that required around-the-clock care. With no facilities in Beeson that could meet Jessica's needs, and unable to afford the necessary care, they reluctantly had to move her 50 miles away to Peoria, Illinois, where she became a temporary ward of the state. It was reported that she died well before the tragic murder occurred. By the way, I post true crime and new cases here every day, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing, it helps a lot. Going back to the story, Dylan was also showing signs of trouble. According to their relatives, he was full of energy and often acted out, which is typical for kids his age. His teachers frequently sent home behavior reports, and Rick and Ruth worked hard to find ways to help him. Eventually, he was diagnosed with ADHD after they decided to seek therapy for him. While the therapy helped a little, it didn't make a significant difference. However, there was a glimmer of hope when Rick's daughter, Nicole, turned 18 and started dating Christopher Harris, a 21-year-old local. Their relationship grew serious quickly, and they married, moving just a minute away from Rick's house. Not long after, Nicole discovered she was pregnant, making Ruth and Rick grandparents for the first time with the arrival of little Elisa Harris. They were thrilled, and Nicole and Chris often dropped Elisa off with Ruth while they worked. And in late July 2009, Nicole and Chris welcomed their second baby. To everyone who knew them, they seemed like the perfect family. With a new baby expected to start crawling soon, Rick's stepdad Pudge and his grandson Adam decided to help Nicole by putting a new carpet in her home that September. The following day, 10-year-old Seton Landstrom ran over to the G's house to show off his new bike. But when he reached the porch, he froze at the sight of blood smeared all over the porch and the door slightly open. Worried, he dashed to Nicole's house where Rick's stepdad had spent the night. As soon as they heard the boy's discovery, they immediately went to the house, and Adam was the first to reach the porch and noticed the blood, as well as a knife at the bottom of the porch steps. When Adam entered the door and turned the lights on, he saw a scene that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Lying in the hallway was Rick, face down in a thick pool of blood. Frozen in shock, Adam dared not to move further. He turned and ran outside to Pudge, telling him to call 911, though he didn't know what to tell the police since he hadn't seen it all firsthand. And when the police arrived, they were met with a huge pool of blood, around 2 to 3 feet wide. As they moved deeper into the house, they saw that Rick's head was completely wrecked and his body looked like it had been through hell. At first, they couldn't tell how he died, but the gruesome scene made them suspect a shotgun was used. They hadn't even checked the other rooms yet. As they walked down the hallway, they noticed the walls were all messed up, like someone had punched or smashed them. Then they found the second victim, 14-year-old Dylan, curled up on the floor just outside the main bedroom, wearing nothing but shorts. His body was badly hurt and his head was just as wrecked as Rick's. Blood splattered everywhere, even on the ceiling, making the officers feel uneasy as they continued through the house. When they stepped into the main bedroom, they saw Ruth lying on the floor in her nightgown. Half of her skull had caved in, and again blood was splattered all over the walls. Pushing on, they entered the attached bathroom, where they found 11-year-old Austin, dressed only in his underwear, lying face down on the bloody tile floor. It was clear that the G family never saw this evil coming. They must have been caught off guard getting ready for bed the night before. The officers moved cautiously through the house, unsure if the killer was still inside. They walked down that bloody hallway past Dylan's lifeless body and headed to 16-year-old Justina's room. And when they entered the room, they found something far more gruesome than what was initially found in the house. Blood smeared across every surface, soaking into her bed, where Justina lay on her stomach, her head hanging over the edge, leaving a puddle of brain matter below. She had suffered the worst injuries of anyone in the family, and just when they thought it couldn't get worse, they braced themselves for what came next. As they left Justina's room, they checked an adjacent space and initially saw no more victims. But then they spotted something in the dark closet. There they found a 3-year-old girl's body crumpled on the floor, surrounded by blood, with skin peeled back above her right ear. It broke the officers' hearts. They were trained professionals, but nothing could prepare them for such a brutal scene, especially involving such a young child beaten to death. Suddenly, a corporal noticed something move. It was the child. A paramedic rushed over and scooped her up like a baby, dashing out to the ambulance. They quickly ushered Nicole into the ambulance too, and off they sped toward the alarming. Moments later, Nicole's husband Chris showed up at the G's house. He had been called from work about the terrible incident. When he arrived, the police confirmed the heartbreaking truth. The family had been murdered. But in the middle of all the chaos and tragedy, there was hope. The police told Chris that Tabitha had survived. Everyone felt a wave of relief, because despite the horrific events, Tabitha was alive and might be able to help uncover who was behind this terrible crime. But not for Chris. He felt nervous when he learned Tabitha was alive. Without thinking twice, Chris jumped back in his truck and drove urgently toward the trauma center where Tabitha was being rushed. Meanwhile, 2 first responders, Logan County Sheriffs Michael Block and Illinois State Trooper Paul Hennessy, were left to sift through the crime scene for clues about what had happened inside the G family's home. Investigators found a bloody handprint on the bathroom vanity where Austin was killed, along with a fresh shoe print outside that matched a K-Swiss tennis shoe. Officers canvassed the small community and followed up on tips. One neighbor reported seeing a silver pickup truck passing by around the time of the murders, noting it had exhaust pipes coming up through the bed behind the cab. Despite these leads, police found no further clues. Dr. John Ralston, a forensic pathologist, performed the autopsies that night. He photographed every inch of the victims' bodies, but the injuries were so numerous that it was hard to keep track of them. But one thing was clear. They had been brutally attacked, and it wasn't from a gun. Initially thought to be caused by a shotgun, it turned out that each member of the G family had been bludgeoned to death, suffering with each blow until they were too weak to fight back. Starting with Rick G., the father, he had 39 impact wounds, 13 of which were to his head. His wife, Ruth, suffered 28 blows all over her body and her skull was crushed. Their 11-year-old son, Austin, had a caved-in skull and was struck at least 21 times. Signs showed he had been pushed against hard objects and someone had stomped on his feet. 14-year-old Dylan had over 100 wounds and was struck at least 52 times. 16-year-old Justina had at least 15 identifiable injuries and was missing the top part of her skull. Meanwhile, Tabitha was in a real fight for her life. Doctors quickly discovered she had multiple skull fractures and serious brain swelling. It was tough for her, she couldn't speak or see because of the swelling in her face. But there was a small silver lining, she could still move her arm, showing she had some strength left. To help her recover, the doctors made the difficult decision to remove a few small pieces of her skull. They hoped this would ease the pressure from the swelling and help her brain heal properly. It was a scary situation, but the medical team was doing everything they could to save her. Nicole remained by Tabitha's side throughout her recovery at the hospital. The atmosphere was tense with police officers standing vigil behind her hospital bed. They knew Tabitha was the only survivor of the horrific incident, and there was a real concern that the suspect might try to come after her. This made it all the more important for them to keep a close watch on her. Additionally, Nicole did her best to help the authorities, sharing everything she could about her loved ones and what had happened. On the other hand, Chris was a constant source of support for Nicole during this incredibly tough time. He spent hours with her, trying to offer comfort and help her navigate the chaos surrounding them. However, things weren't simple between Chris and Nicole. Their relationship had been tumultuous, filled with ups and downs. They had broken up several times, but had only managed to patch things up again earlier that same year in 2009. Days passed and the police found themselves at a standstill. Despite following every lead they could, like the details of the suspicious car and the fresh shoe prints, they still hadn't identified any official suspects. The G family had no known enemies. In fact, they were well liked in the neighborhood, known for their generosity and kindness. Many neighbors could vouch for their good nature, painting a picture of a family that was both wealthy and loving. In light of the recent events, the police took precautions and encouraged everyone in the community to secure their homes and stay alert. People just need to take the normal precautions that you would take, the practical measures of at night, lock your door, know where your children are at, and keep track of your neighbors. A week passed, and the funeral for the G family was held on the 28th of that same month. It was a heartbreaking day, but among all the grief, Tabitha was still fighting for her life in the hospital. And while the community mourned, there was also a lingering fear because the killer was still out there, and no one knew when or if they might strike again. Then, in a random but significant twist of fate, a major break in the case came at the hospital, where Tabitha was being treated. One officer, after finishing his shift in guarding Tabitha, shared an elevator ride with Chris Harris, who had just left Tabitha's room. The officer happened to glance down and noticed Chris's shoes, cased with sneakers with an aggressive tread, just like the shoe print found outside the crime scene. The officer quickly informed detectives, which led to Chris being called in for questioning. They compared his shoe tread to the print found at the scene, but there was a slight discrepancy. The shoes were a half size too big. However, the detectives knew something was off, so they didn't stop there. They collected Christopher Harris's fingerprints and palm prints, sending them to the crime lab for further analysis. To prove his innocence, his brother, Jason Harris, stepped in to defend him, providing an alibi and claiming they had been together the entire time, far away from Beeson, where the murders occurred. Meanwhile, Nicole was furious at the mere suggestion that Christopher could be involved. She took to her MySpace page to defend him, writing in an emotional, though error-filled message. This whole situation is such a mess and so unfair. Not only have my children lost 5 close family members, but now their daddy is being set up and taken away. This is too much to bear. Nicole continued, there's solid evidence that all 6 victims fought for their lives, and Chris doesn't even have a scratch on him. He's been with us through everything and now they've taken him too. Nicole wasn't the only one standing up for Chris. His stepmother, Debbie Harris, also spoke out to the media, saying their family believed in his innocence. Chris' father, Ed, was in tears during a phone call with Chris from jail. According to Debbie, Chris was shocked by his arrest and scared for his family's safety, telling his father, Dad, I'm scared because I know the killers are still out there. He swore he didn't commit the murders. When police booked Chris, they photographed his entire body. Although he didn't have any injuries, they noticed a large blister on the palm of his right hand. Coincidentally, a tire iron was later found near a creek by Jason's house, where investigators were still searching for clues. On October 2nd, when they seized Chris' truck, they found it belonged to Jennifer Ernest, Jason's girlfriend and mother of his other children. Both Jennifer and her mother, Sarah Duncan, had provided alibis for Chris and Jason on the night of the murders. But as the investigation unfolded, those alibis were proven false, leading to their arrest for obstruction of justice. The police were able to discredit the alibis partly because Chris' palm print had been found at the scene. Additionally, a woman named Lori Cole, an armed security guard, came forward. She claimed that on the night of the murders, around 11:35 p.m., Chris and his brother Jason knocked on her door, asking if she wanted to party. Lori, who lived not far from the G family, recalled telling Chris she wasn't interested and needed to sleep for work. She noticed a Ford Ranger parked outside, similar to the one Chris and Jason were seen with earlier. Although she told them to leave, their behavior left her unsettled, as they seemed to have already been partying and didn't want the night to end. Another woman, Christy Moore, came forward during the investigation. She told investigators that she and Chris had been on-again, off-again lovers. She revealed that Chris had called her late on that same Sunday night, but she was busy with her kids and couldn't meet up for what she knew he wanted, sex. However, she agreed to see him after her children went to school the next morning. Chris arrived at her house in Clinton, just a 15-minute drive from Beeson, about 12 hours after the murders. They slept together and Christy said Chris was acting completely normal. Afterward, Christy even took selfies of the two of them in bed. In the pictures, they were kissing and giving each other flirtatious looks, with Chris smiling in some of them. She told investigators that Chris had no visible injuries or marks on his body, and that nothing about him seemed unusual, except that she hadn't seen him in the past 2 months, likely because he had just had a baby with Nicole 2 months earlier. From the moment Chris was accused, he maintained his innocence, denying any involvement in the murders. However, when confronted with fingerprint evidence, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and got a lawyer. It seemed that Chris was content to let the legal process play out, but things took a sharp turn as the pressure began to mount on his brother, Jason. Initially charged with obstruction of justice, Jason's charges were soon upgraded to 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, the same as Chris' charges. Jason, now facing the possibility of life in prison, had a choice to make. Stay silent and support his brother or tell the truth and save himself. The survival instinct kicked in and Jason began to talk. The story he told was chilling. According to Jason, the night had started with drugs and alcohol. He and Chris had been out partying hard, drinking and snorting cocaine. Eventually, they decided they needed a woman's company to keep the night going. They first tried to reach out to some ex-girlfriends, but both women turned them down. That should have been the end of the night, but under the influence of drugs and Chris' heightened libido, the brothers continued their search for female company, which tragically led them to the G family's home. Jason recounted that they had first tried to visit Lori Cole, the armed security guard who lived nearby. He waited in the truck while Chris approached Lori's door, but she turned him away. What happened next is where Jason's story became inconsistent. He gave 13 different versions of the events, but the one thing that remained constant was his claim that Chris killed the G family. Jason alleged that it was Chris' idea to go to the G residence with the intent of having sex with Justina G, the 16-year-old daughter of the family and Chris' sister-in-law. Chris had convinced himself that Justina had been flirting with him. Whether they planned for it to be consensual or not remains unclear, but Jason said Chris believed Justina was interested in him. He then said that he stayed in the truck while Chris approached the house. In some versions of the story, Chris was already armed with a tire iron. In others, he went to the door without it. In one account, Rick G., the father, answered the door, and after a brief conversation things escalated, leading Chris to retrieve the tire iron from the truck. Jason said he then heard screams and thumping sounds coming from inside the house, the horrifying beginning of what would turn into a gruesome massacre. Jason said he stayed in the pickup truck the whole time, just listening to the chaos inside the house. He heard loud thumps and screams and saw Dylan jump out of a bedroom window. A week passed, and the funeral for the G family was held on the 28th of that same month. It was a heartbreaking day, but among all the grief, Tabitha was still fighting for her life in the hospital. And while the community mourned, there was also a lingering fear because the killer was still out there, and no one knew when or if they might strike again. Then, in a random but significant twist of fate, a major break in the case came at the hospital, where Tabitha was being treated. One officer, after finishing his shift in guarding Tabitha, shared an elevator ride with Chris Harris, who had just left Tabitha's room. The officer happened to glance down and noticed Chris's shoes, cased with sneakers with an aggressive tread, just like the shoe print found outside the crime scene. The officer quickly informed detectives, which led to Chris being called in for questioning. They compared his shoe tread to the print found at the scene, but there was a slight discrepancy. The shoes were a half size too big. However, the detectives knew something was off, so they didn't stop there. They collected Christopher Harris's fingerprints and palm prints, sending them to the crime lab for further analysis. To prove his innocence, his brother, Jason Harris, stepped in to defend him, providing an alibi and claiming they had been together the entire time, far away from Beeson, where the murders occurred. Meanwhile, Nicole was furious at the mere suggestion that Christopher could be involved. She took to her MySpace page to defend him, writing in an emotional, though error-filled message. This whole situation is such a mess and so unfair. Not only have my children lost 5 close family members, but now their daddy is being set up and taken away. This is too much to bear. Nicole continued, there's solid evidence that all 6 victims fought for their lives, and Chris doesn't even have a scratch on him. He's been with us through everything and now they've taken him too. Nicole wasn't the only one standing up for Chris. His stepmother, Debbie Harris, also spoke out to the media, saying their family believed in his innocence. Chris' father, Ed, was in tears during a phone call with Chris from jail. According to Debbie, Chris was shocked by his arrest and scared for his family's safety, telling his father, Dad, I'm scared because I know the killers are still out there. He swore he didn't commit the murders. When police booked Chris, they photographed his entire body. Although he didn't have any injuries, they noticed a large blister on the palm of his right hand. Coincidentally, a tire iron was later found near a creek by Jason's house, where investigators were still searching for clues. On October 2nd, when they seized Chris' truck, they found it belonged to Jennifer Ernest, Jason's girlfriend and mother of his other children. Both Jennifer and her mother, Sarah Duncan, had provided alibis for Chris and Jason on the night of the murders. But as the investigation unfolded, those alibis were proven false, leading to their arrest for obstruction of justice. The police were able to discredit the alibis partly because Chris' palm print had been found at the scene. Additionally, a woman named Lori Cole, an armed security guard, came forward. She claimed that on the night of the murders, around 11:35 p.m., Chris and his brother Jason knocked on her door, asking if she wanted to party. Lori, who lived not far from the G family, recalled telling Chris she wasn't interested and needed to sleep for work. She noticed a Ford Ranger parked outside, similar to the one Chris and Jason were seen with earlier. Although she told them to leave, their behavior left her unsettled, as they seemed to have already been partying and didn't want the night to end. Another woman, Christy Moore, came forward during the investigation. She told investigators that she and Chris had been on-again, off-again lovers. She revealed that Chris had called her late on that same Sunday night, but she was busy with her kids and couldn't meet up for what she knew he wanted, sex. However, she agreed to see him after her children went to school the next morning. Chris arrived at her house in Clinton, just a 15-minute drive from Beeson, about 12 hours after the murders. They slept together and Christy said Chris was acting completely normal. Afterward, Christy even took selfies of the two of them in bed. In the pictures, they were kissing and giving each other flirtatious looks, with Chris smiling in some of them. She told investigators that Chris had no visible injuries or marks on his body, and that nothing about him seemed unusual, except that she hadn't seen him in the past 2 months, likely because he had just had a baby with Nicole 2 months earlier. From the moment Chris was accused, he maintained his innocence, denying any involvement in the murders. However, when confronted with fingerprint evidence, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and got a lawyer. It seemed that Chris was content to let the legal process play out, but things took a sharp turn as the pressure began to mount on his brother, Jason. Initially charged with obstruction of justice, Jason's charges were soon upgraded to 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, the same as Chris' charges. Jason, now facing the possibility of life in prison, had a choice to make. Stay silent and support his brother or tell the truth and save himself. The survival instinct kicked in and Jason began to talk. The story he told was chilling. According to Jason, the night had started with drugs and alcohol. He and Chris had been out partying hard, drinking and snorting cocaine. Eventually, they decided they needed a woman's company to keep the night going. They first tried to reach out to some ex-girlfriends, but both women turned them down. That should have been the end of the night, but under the influence of drugs and Chris' heightened libido, the brothers continued their search for female company, which tragically led them to the G family's home. Jason recounted that they had first tried to visit Lori Cole, the armed security guard who lived nearby. He waited in the truck while Chris approached Lori's door, but she turned him away. What happened next is where Jason's story became inconsistent. He gave 13 different versions of the events, but the one thing that remained constant was his claim that Chris killed the G family. Jason alleged that it was Chris' idea to go to the G residence with the intent of having sex with Justina G, the 16-year-old daughter of the family and Chris' sister-in-law. Chris had convinced himself that Justina had been flirting with him. Whether they planned for it to be consensual or not remains unclear, but Jason said Chris believed Justina was interested in him. He then said that he stayed in the truck while Chris approached the house. In some versions of the story, Chris was already armed with a tire iron. In others, he went to the door without it. In one account, Rick G., the father, answered the door, and after a brief conversation things escalated, leading Chris to retrieve the tire iron from the truck. Jason said he then heard screams and thumping sounds coming from inside the house, the horrifying beginning of what would turn into a gruesome massacre. Jason said he stayed in the pickup truck the whole time, just listening to the chaos inside the house. He heard loud thumps and screams and saw Dylan jump out of a bedroom window. After that, Dylan ran to the front door and went back inside. Next thing Jason knew, Dylan burst out of the house, bleeding a lot, with Christopher Harris right behind him. Jason saw Chris hit Dylan 5 or 6 times with a tire iron before heading back inside. Miraculously, Dylan got back on his feet and went into the house again. A few minutes later, Chris came out and hopped into the pickup. As they drove down the dirt road, he tossed his shoes and the tire iron out the window like it was no big deal. It's important to note that there had been a complaint of attempted sexual assault against Christopher Harris involving Justina, but this complaint was dropped just a week before the incident. Jason suggested that Christopher had intended to go to the G house for sexual motives, which ultimately did not happen. Investigators retraced the path that Jason Harris had described during his testimony. They found the K-Swiss shoes and the tire iron thrown into a ditch beside the road. Forensic tests confirmed that the DNA found on these items matched both Christopher Harris and the G family. On May 31, 2013, a jury found Christopher Harris guilty of murdering the G family. His sentencing happened on July 19, 2013, where he received 5 consecutive life sentences. In addition, he was sentenced to 30 years for the attempted murder of Tabitha, 30 years for home invasion, and 20 years for robbery. Christopher Harris's defense team tried to argue that he had walked in on Dylan during the murders and acted in self-defense when he killed Dylan. However, this argument was quickly dismissed. In 2013, just before his sentencing, Christopher and his legal team sought a retrial, but their request was denied. Later, in 2019, they filed an appeal with the Appellate Court of Illinois, 4th District, but that too was denied. You think the story ends here? Well, not quite. A former cellmate of Chris stepped forward, claiming that Chris had confided in him about the terrible events of that night. This cellmate revealed a story even darker than what Jason had shared. According to him, when Chris arrived at the G home, Rick answered the door. An argument broke out, escalating quickly when Chris hit Rick with the tire iron. Ruth heard the commotion and rushed in to see what was going on. Sadly, as she entered the room, Chris turned his violent rage on her. In the midst of the chaos, Dylan grabbed a kitchen knife, trying to protect his mother. But Chris was too strong, and it was during this intense moment that Jason saw Dylan crash through the window for the first time. In a chilling twist, the cellmate reported that Chris felt no remorse for his actions. In fact, he claimed his only regret was not burning down the house that night, suggesting that if he had, no one would ever know he was responsible for the violence. And let's not forget Nicole. With all the evidence piling up against Chris, she went from defending him to cursing him. Additionally, during the sentencing hearing, Tabitha also delivered an emotional statement that tugged at everyone's heartstrings. She said, "I am 7 and it still breaks my heart. I wish you were dead and my brothers, sister and mommy and daddy were alive. You don't sneak up on other people. You have to say sorry because do you know how badly that broke my heart?" As for Jason, he got a 10-year sentence in exchange for testifying against Chris, with credit for time served. This decision sparked debate. Many questioned if it was fair for someone who played a part in such terrible acts. There were many times that night when Jason could have stepped in to help. He heard Dylan calling out for assistance, begging him to intervene, but he didn't act. However, his testimony helped bring justice for the G family. After the trial, Jason's girlfriend, Jennifer, and her mother faced probation and fines for hiding evidence. Meanwhile, little Tabitha, who was protected by state troopers during her hospital stay, formed a special bond with them. They painted her toenails, read her stories, and played games, showering her with the love and care she needed. They even threw her a birthday party. Despite going through many surgeries, Tabitha made a remarkable recovery, and fortunately, the head injuries she suffered allowed her to forget the horrific events that took her family away. Tabitha spent some time in foster care but eventually found a loving home with her sister, Nicole. As the community mourned and tried to heal from this tragic loss, they dedicated a playground in memory of Austin, Dylan, and Justina, creating a space where their spirits could be honored and celebrated. In an interesting twist, in 2014, the show When Murder Comes to Town aired, trying to shed light on the G family murders. Despite interviewing various residents and officers involved in the case, the show leaned heavily on the defense's narrative, suggesting that Dylan was a deeply troubled boy, capable of violence. This portrayal sparked outrage among those who had worked on the case. The officers involved wrote an open letter questioning the show's accuracy, particularly how Dylan was portrayed. They emphasized his heroism, stating he wasn't just a victim but a brave teen who tried to protect his family. I agree with their perspective. as Dylan's actions deserve recognition for his courage in the face of tragedy. Story 2. Jennifer grew up in Oklahoma and was raised by a single mother and also had a brother named David. Although from a humble background, Jennifer had a good childhood. She completed high school and went on to study business at San Diego National University. Her friends described her as a very sweet woman. One thing very dear and important to Jennifer was her faith. Whenever she thought about marriage, the first quality of a good husband that came to her mind was his attachment to religion. She wanted to spend her life with a good Christian man. Unfortunately, her husband would be the exact opposite of who Jennifer wanted to marry. Jennifer met 25-year-old Michael Blagg at a party in 1988. He was a helicopter pilot in the U.S. Navy and was stationed in San Diego those days. Michael was brought up in a family that moved a lot because his father was a colonel in the Air Force. He was an incredibly well-behaved child and was extremely intelligent and hardworking. He always got good grades in school and excelled in co-curricular activities. Michael was so smart that he got into the Governor's Honor Program and went to Georgia Tech to study nuclear engineering. During his degree, Michael enlisted in the Navy so he could afford college and complete his higher studies. Jennifer was quickly drawn into him because he seemed to place the same emphasis on faith as she did. The two started meeting frequently, and Michael appeared to be a great family man to Jennifer, who she thought would provide for her and their kids. Jennifer and Michael got married in 1991. While it was Jennifer's first marriage, Michael had already been in a marriage before, but it had lasted only a year and he parted ways with his first wife. After some time, Michael Blagg retired from the Navy and started a career as an engineer. The Blagg family moved to Simpsonville, South Carolina and welcomed a baby girl into their home, who was named Abby. Jennifer loved being in Simpsonville. The Blagg family made new friends through their church, and Jennifer started teaching a woman's Bible study group. Michael also became a co-teacher at the Bible school. Jennifer had found a strong and take-charge person in Michael, which she loved. He was very caring and protective of her. However, according to Jennifer's friends, her behavior suggested otherwise at some occasions. She would get nervous and often panicked as Michael's time to return home came close. Jennifer always focused on keeping the house in perfect condition so Michael could have an environment when he came back from work. Despite all this, the Blagg family seemed happy and Jennifer was really loving being in Simpsonville. But then Michael found a new job as operations manager in a manufacturing plant in Grand Junction, Colorado. Jennifer didn't want to leave her happy routine in Simpsonville, but she had to because she also wanted to be a dutiful wife to Michael. Things took a complete turn after the Blagg family moved to Grand Junction. Jennifer started seeming unhappy and one could easily tell something was wrong in her personal life. The year was 2001 when the Blagg family moved to Colorado. Jennifer was 34 years old and Abby was just 6 when the family moved to their new home. Just a few months into their new home, an incident happened that shocked the whole community in Grand Junction. On November 13, 2001, Michael Blagg left for work early in the morning. This is his normal routine. He would leave early and come back in the evening. Because of his protective nature, he would call his wife multiple times throughout the day to check if she and his daughter Abby were okay. But on this particular day when he called home after reaching the office, no one picked up the phone. It was quite strange since Jennifer always answered Michael's calls. He waited a while for Jennifer's call before calling his home number again to check on her. Again, no one picked it up. Worried about the safety of Jennifer and Abby, Michael left a voicemail saying, "Man, where are you guys? Hope everything's going okay. I love you guys." When there was no response or news of Jennifer and Abby after a few hours of trying to contact them, Michael decided to leave the office early and go check on his family. As soon as he got home, he called 911 and reported that both his wife and daughter were missing. He also told the operator that there was blood all over the master bedroom of their house. The law enforcement authorities rushed to Michael's home. When the police officers entered the couple's bedroom, they found a huge amount of blood spilled in it. A jewelry box was also tipped upside down in the bedroom and Jennifer's purse was dumped on the floor with its contents spread throughout the room. Initially believed to be a kidnapping case, the officers quickly changed their minds because of the blood quantity they found in the bedroom. Kidnappings don't have a large amount of blood on the crime scene, so the authorities knew there was another aspect to this story. Other than the amount of blood, its placement was also strange. The blood was only on the bed. The walls in the hallway were absolutely clean. There weren't any drag marks in the house either. While the investigation team was looking for a murderer, Michael appeared to believe his wife and daughter had been kidnapped and were still alive. He even requested the public for help in returning his family and posted a reward for $2,000 for anyone who gave information about Jennifer and Abby. The Colorado River became the center point of the investigation as police believed the victims' bodies might have been dumped in the area. While the investigators were searching the areas near the Colorado River, forensic experts were working inside the black home to find any clues that might lead the authorities to Jennifer and Abby. According to the people in the neighborhood, the last they had seen the victims alive was a day earlier when Jennifer came back home after picking up Abby from school. As forensic experts examined different parts of the house, they found blood in the family van. This was the point when Michael turned from a grieving husband and father to a suspect in a double homicide case. But when he was interviewed, he said he didn't know anything about where Jennifer and Abby had gone. "I haven't got a clue who would have any malice in their heart against anyone in our family. Abby is a wonderful girl." He also gave the investigators a timeline leading into the incident. According to Michael, a day before his family went missing, Abby went to bed at her usual time at 7 p.m., but both he and Jennifer stayed up late as they normally would. Then around 8 p.m., Jennifer got a call from one of her friends who invited her to lunch the next day. Jennifer accepted the invitation and planned to meet up with her friend before going to bed with her husband around 10 p.m. Michael then told the officers about the day of the incident. As per his account, he woke up around 5:30 a.m. on November 13, 2001 to go to work. Both his wife and daughter were still asleep because their wake-up time was around 6:30 a.m. normally. Michael said that he used to call Jennifer multiple times throughout the day to check in on her. He did the same on November 13th as well, but she didn't answer his calls. Initially, he didn't think anything could be wrong, but after a few hours he grew suspicious and went home from work, and that's when he discovered his wife and daughter were missing. But someone knew that November 13th would be an unusual day in Jennifer and Abby's lives because Abby's school received a call on November 12th, and the caller informed the administration that she would not be coming to school the next day. Although the school didn't know the identity of the person, they did have the record saying Abby would be missing school on November 13th. Besides the voice notes mentioned earlier in the video, other voice notes were also found, one of them saying, "Hello my beautiful bride, I hope you are out and about doing all kinds of cool and nifty things." Michael maintained his religious persona in front of authorities. "Through the strength of the Holy Spirit, I am able to be sitting here in front of you right now. Every fiber, every corner of my body wants to scream out and shout and grab somebody by the neck and say, 'You did it,' and tear them limb from limb. We are talking about the two important people in my life are missing right now." As the investigation expanded, the officers strongly started to believe that Michael had something to do with the disappearance of Jennifer and Abby. Michael, on the other hand, was constantly denying that and even started criticizing the police for considering him a suspect in the case. Michael told the press that it bothered him that he was being looked into despite the fact that he had lost his wife and daughter. A month after Jennifer and Abby's disappearance, Michael Blagg moved out of the family home. He said it was too hard to stay in the house where he lost his wife and daughter. While investigators did their job, Michael kept making frequent appearances in the media, saying he believed this was a case of burglary gone wrong. "I've got some great hopes that we're going to find something out. Like you said, somebody knows something. I've certainly had many a time where I've just been completely out of control, but I've also spent a lot of time in my Bible, and the Lord has given me a peace about this." Michael even bought Christmas presents for Jennifer and Abby and told everyone that he hoped they would be home soon to open them. People were sympathetic towards Michael Blagg because he wasn't only grieving the loss of his family, but he was also looked into as their possible killer. However, police and some of Jennifer's friends knew Michael had something to do with his wife and daughter's disappearance. As time passed, the suspicion grew stronger because of new evidence and witnesses, but Michael kept insisting he was innocent. He initially denied any fight with Jennifer before she and Abby disappeared, but the investigators later found a note in which Michael had apologized to Jennifer for letting the devil get a foothold in their lives. But that wasn't as strange as the next thing that was found during the Blagg house. Thousands of pornography images. Upon asking Michael about them, he said that Jennifer downloaded these images for educational purposes because she wanted to be a good wife and serve her husband. Eddie Melson, one of Jennifer's friends, also gave the police some odd pieces of information. According to Melson's accounts, right before Jennifer and Abby went missing, Jennifer called her and asked if they both could visit her. She also told Melson that Michael would not be with them. This was strange to Melson because she knew the Blagg family always traveled together. In February 2002, Michael was found stealing a shredder and a table from his office. He was brought in to be asked about the theft he had committed. While answering the questions by the investigators, Michael Blagg kept asking them about the possible penalties for murder. This was, again, very strange coming from someone whose wife and daughter had disappeared a few months ago. Investigators now had all their information on Michael and were trying to crack him under questioning. One day, when the officers rang Michael's bell, no one opened the door. They could hear the sound of running water coming out of the house, but no one was responding to the knocks on the door. Suspecting something was wrong, the police kicked the door open. When they entered the bathroom, Michael was lying in the bathtub with his wrists cut. There was also a photo of Jennifer and Abby with him and a note saying that he didn't kill his wife or daughter. He was quickly taken to the hospital and was given medical care. Due to the harsh winters in Colorado, the search operation was halted till spring after the initial attempts. The search resumed in April. The investigators marked a 45-kilometer radius for the search operation but couldn't find any clue of Jennifer or Abby's bodies. In the meantime, one of Michael's co-workers called the police and shared an important tip. On the day of Jennifer and Abby's disappearance, Michael's colleague saw him taking the trash out at work. Michael was pushing a pallet jack with 2 large cardboard boxes, which he discarded on the loading dock that went to the trash compactor. The co-worker, unaware of the contents of a person discarding normal trash, would have said yes, but Michael Blagg immediately declined the offer because he knew it wasn't any normal trash. It was unusual for a person who was working as an engineer in the company and had nothing to do with trash handling. This was an important lead that could take the authorities to Jennifer and Abby's bodies. The first task was locating the landfill where Michael's firm was dumping their trash. Once the landfill site was tracked, the task was the difficult of everything the police had to do until that point. Locate the possible places in the landfill where trash from Michael's company might have ended up. When this development was revealed to the public, a normal person would have been happy that the case of his wife and daughter's disappearance was nearing closure. But Michael did something exactly the opposite. He left the state. What's even more strange was that he told no one, including the police, about his plan and where he was going. Nearly 7 months after the disappearance of Michael's wife and daughter was reported, authorities found what they had been looking for. After weeks of searching, on June 5, 2002, the authorities found Jennifer Blagg's body in the landfill. She was wrapped up in a red and black tint. The body was unwrapped, cleaned, and sent for an autopsy. When the autopsy report came, it shocked everyone, including Jennifer's family and friends. Jennifer Blagg had been shot and the bullet was still inside her skull. The report also revealed that she was killed in her sleep because the investigators found a retainer in her mouth that she only wore when going to bed. After finding Jennifer's body, the investigators knew that Abby Blagg's body must also have been dumped into the same landfill. A new wave of searches began with more force to find Abby Blagg's body. However, the police couldn't find Abby's body even after 7 weeks of searching. The authorities looked through roughly 7,000 tons of trash in search of Abby's body, but they knew exactly whom they had to take into custody now: Michael Blagg. Police had a possible reason to arrest Michael, but there was a problem. No one knew where he was. After some searching, it was discovered that Michael Blagg's mother lived in Georgia, so it was possible that he was hiding at her place. The guess came out to be true because Michael Blagg was at his mother's house when the police went to search it. He was immediately arrested and brought back to Colorado to face the charges of his wife and daughter's murder. This was the first time that the public knew that the person pretending to be a grieving husband and father was his family's killer. By this time, Michael Blagg's first wife had also come to the fore, giving statements in the media that Michael was a completely normal guy and had never abused her while they were together. But as the investigation progressed, it was found that the Blagg family wasn't as perfect as it seemed from the outside. From the very beginning, Jennifer and Michael had some disagreements, and they often engaged in arguments. After marrying Michael, Jennifer realized that her husband wasn't the religious person she thought he was. Michael Blagg would go to parties, which Jennifer didn't like because of her religious upbringing. After repeated requests by Jennifer to stop doing what she thought was unethical, Michael Blagg's wife eventually asked him to choose between her and his inappropriate habits. Michael assured her he had given up his habits and their relationship became normal. This was also the time when Abby was born. However, Michael was still in the Navy and didn't give much time to Jennifer, which led her into postpartum depression after Abby's birth. When Michael left the U.S. Navy and began teaching at a Sunday school, Jennifer discovered something new about her husband. He had started talking inappropriately to the kids. In fact, he was preaching his own conservative beliefs by talking about abortion and sexuality. As a result, Michael was fired from his job. This also resulted in financial problems for the Blagg family, who were already there because their previous house wasn't selling. And when it finally did, they lost more than $8,000. Jennifer often called her friends in Simpsonville and told them she wasn't happy living in Grand Junction. But she also used to say that since Michael was happy about his job, she was willing to stay in Colorado as a dutiful wife. While the police were trying to make Michael share the motive of his murders, a worker at a legal firm came forward and told authorities that Jennifer had come to the firm a few days before her disappearance. She was quite disturbed and wanted to talk to an attorney. It was later discovered that Jennifer was being abused by Michael and wanted a divorce from her husband. A further look into Michael's computer revealed that he frequently used an escort service. Upon interviewing the workers of the escort service, it was found that Michael Blagg frequently visited them and used to get massages from topless women. When the investigators asked Michael about it, he said his wife knew about it because the couple was having sexual problems at home, so he went to the massage center for the sake of research. But it was soon discovered that Michael wasn't only addicted to explicit practices and websites, but he also forced Jennifer to watch it with him. This clarified why Jennifer wanted separation from Michael Blagg. Her diary showed an extremely religious woman, constantly praying and working on her relationship with God. The investigators also found a note in one of Jennifer's books in which she had written about a recent fight with her husband. All the witness statements and evidence against Michael Blagg made one thing clear as daylight. He was abusive towards his wife and constantly forced her to do things she didn't want to do. When she refused, he decided to kill to protect his secret life, and this also explained the disappearance of Abby Blagg. According to the investigators, she probably saw her father killing her mother, so Michael killed his daughter too. Since there was no concrete proof that it was Michael Blagg who killed Jennifer and Abby, the prosecution decided against seeking the death penalty for the accused. Michael Blagg was even released on bond to live with his mother while awaiting trial. In March 2004, Michael Blagg's trial began, and he was charged with first-degree murder. The prosecution told the jury that Michael Blagg killed his wife because she wanted a divorce from him. He then wrapped the bodies of both Jennifer and Abby, took them to his job and dumped them there. Michael then acted normal and called his home multiple times as he normally would. Michael Blagg even left a few messages in the voicemail to make it look like he was completely unaware of what had happened to his wife and daughter. This is why he called the police on November 13th, so the authorities considered it a case of home invasion. Jennifer's mother told the jury that Michael Blagg had abused her daughter multiple times during their marriage, and even choked her once while he was drunk. The defense attorney argued that a predator broke into the Blagg home and killed Jennifer and Abby when they resisted. Throughout the trial, Michael Blagg maintained that he was not guilty and had nothing to do with his wife and daughter's murder. On April 16, 2004, the jury found Michael Blagg guilty of murdering his wife and daughter. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the case saw a new turn when, 10 years after the conviction, the verdict was overturned because one of the jurors in Michael Blagg's case had lied about their domestic violence history in the juror questionnaire. As a result, Michael Blagg was granted a retrial. However, the Colorado Supreme Court granted the prosecutors an emergency stay to keep Michael Blagg in prison while he awaited the retrial. Michael Blagg's retrial began in February 2018, and his attorneys brought in new evidence in a try to get him acquitted. The defense also tried to dispute the investigation method followed in Michael Blagg's case. However, Michael Blagg was once again found guilty of killing his wife and daughter and given the same sentence as before, life imprisonment, marking the end of a heinous crime case. Story 3. On March 19, 2024, Heath Smiley returned home from work, unaware that a chilling confrontation awaited him. Moments after entering the house, a gunshot rang out as his 15-year-old stepdaughter Carly lay in wait. Hit by a bullet in the neck, Heath barely escaped with his life. In a 911 call he reported, "I think my wife has been shot. I just got home and there is blood everywhere." With urgency in his voice, he detailed the chaos surrounding him and informed the dispatcher that Carly had fled the scene, leading law enforcement into a rapidly escalating crisis. What could drive a teenager to such a horrific act? Despite what should have been clear-cut evidence, surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, and confessions, this case only proved one thing. Things were not as they seemed. Proving what truly happened that day and why would be a nearly impossible task. This is the story of the Carly Gregg case. Let's dive in. The day began like any other for Carly and Ashley. Carly, an exceptional student who had skipped a grade, was known for her intelligence, but had recently shown signs of distress. She was undergoing therapy for anxiety and stress, largely stemming from her tumultuous relationship with her biological father, Kevin Gregg, who struggled with drug addiction. Meanwhile, Ashley, a dedicated algebra teacher from Northwest Rankin High School, and a beloved figure in the community, was focused on her teaching career and her family life. At school that day, Carly interacted with friends and teachers, but kept her struggles hidden. Despite her outwardly normal behavior, she was secretly dealing with significant issues, including conflicts with her mother over drug use. Ashley had recently discovered that Carly was using marijuana through vape pens, which added tension to their relationship. Carly and Ashley arrived at their residence shortly after 4 p.m. Ashley had received information regarding Carly's alleged marijuana use through vape pens, which prompted her to confront Carly upon returning home. As soon as they entered the house, Ashley proceeded to Carly's bedroom to search for evidence of drug use. At this point, only the two were present in the home. Home surveillance footage captured Carly holding an object behind her back as she approached her mother. The nature of this object would soon become critical to the investigation. Ashley had kept a loaded firearm in the house for protection due to concerns about Carly's biological father, Kevin Gregg, who had a history of drug addiction. Carly had retrieved the same firearm located underneath the bedside where Ashley slept. Seconds after the confrontation began, Ashley was shot by Carly 3 times. After shooting her mother point blank, Carly sent a frantic text message to her friend, asking to come over and help with an emergency. This call for assistance indicated Carly's immediate need for support for shooting. Upon receiving the message, the friend quickly made her way to Carly's home. When Carly's friend arrived at the front door, she was greeted with a chilling question. "Are you squeamish around dead bodies?" This statement set a grim tone as Carly led her friend into the bedroom where Ashley lay on the floor. Carly then allegedly revealed, "I put 3 in my mom and I have 3 more for my stepdad when he gets home." After showing her friend the scene, Carly reportedly took down an interior camera from its mount and placed it in the refrigerator. This action suggested an attempt to tamper with evidence and indicated a level of premeditation regarding her actions. Prior to leaving the office, Heath Smiley, who was Carly's stepfather, had received a text from Ashley's phone asking when he would be returning home from work. He replied he would be working a little late. Heath arrived home at approximately 5:03 p.m. He initially perceived nothing unusual as he entered the house. However, as he opened the kitchen door, a gunshot rang out as he stepped onto the threshold. Carly was waiting to pounce, but fortunately for Heath, she could not get a good enough shot. Heath was grazed by a bullet in the neck area during this encounter. He subsequently attempted to follow Carly as she fled outside. Heath Smiley placed a frantic 911 call shortly after being shot by his own stepdaughter. In the call he reported, "I think my wife has been shot. I just got home and there is blood everywhere." His voice was urgent as he provided details about the situation. He described being shot in the neck and indicated that Carly had fled the scene. Heath stated, "She shot me in the head," and informed the dispatcher that Carly had a firearm, which he believed was left on the kitchen counter. He provided a description of Carly and her direction of flight, saying she ran towards Magnolia Place. This information was critical for law enforcement as they began their response. Deputies from the Rankin County Sheriff's Office arrived on the scene within minutes of the 911 call. Upon arrival, they found Heath outside the front door, visibly injured and in need of medical attention. Officers quickly assessed his condition and called for medical assistance while securing the area. As deputies entered the home, they discovered Ashley lying on the floor of her bedroom. The scene was chaotic. Evidence of a violent confrontation was immediately apparent. The deputies noted multiple gunshot wounds on Ashley's body, confirming that she had been shot at close range. This discovery marked a significant turning point in the investigation. The initial assessment by law enforcement included securing the crime scene and gathering evidence. They noted the position of Ashley's body and collected any potential ballistics evidence from both inside and outside the home. The deputies also examined surveillance footage from both inside and outside the residence to piece together a timeline of events leading up to the shooting. Heath provided a detailed account of what he had encountered when he returned home, which would later serve as crucial testimony in court. His statements about Carly's actions immediately before and after the shooting were vital for understanding her state of mind. As part of their investigation, deputies also began a search for Carly, utilizing outdoor surveillance footage to track her movements after she fled. A Mississippi Highway Patrol helicopter was deployed to assist in locating her. Carly was apprehended approximately 30 minutes after the shooting without further incident. She was taken into custody and charged with multiple offenses, including murder and attempted murder, based on evidence gathered at the scene and Heath's statements. The swift response by law enforcement and their methodical approach to gathering evidence laid the groundwork for what would become a complex legal case involving serious charges against Carly Gregg. After the shooting incident from March 19, 2024, Carly Gregg was taken into custody shortly after law enforcement arrived at the scene. She was held at Rankin County Jail in Brandon, Mississippi, where she remained pending trial. Carly was charged as an adult with murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. Her bond was set at $1 million, a significant amount reflecting the severity of the charges. Throughout this period, Carly remained in custody, awaiting the legal proceedings that would follow. During her time in custody, Carly's legal team began to prepare for her defense. The prosecution's case was based on the evidence collected at the scene, including eyewitness accounts and forensic analysis. Carly pleaded not guilty to all charges, maintaining her innocence as the case progressed. Carly also underwent several mental health evaluations to assess her psychological state. These evaluations were crucial in understanding her behavior leading up to the incident. Discussions around her history of anxiety in previous therapy sessions were significant as they became central to the defense's argument. In the months following her arrest, Carly was offered a plea deal that would result in a 40-year prison sentence. However, she rejected this device through her defense team, opting to go to trial instead. This decision indicated her desire to contest the charges against her fully. As the trial date approached, Carly's legal team focused on gathering evidence and witness testimonies. They sought to build a comprehensive defense that would address both the factual elements of the case and Carly's mental health issues. This preparation involved reviewing surveillance footage, analyzing text messages, and consulting with mental health experts. What would you do if you found yourself in the same situation as the defense team? The complexities of such a case often raise challenging questions about accountability and mental health. The case of Carly Gregg took a dramatic turn on August 19, when the defense attorneys faced scrutiny from the prestigious judge. While Carly had been deemed competent to stand trial, questions rose about her mental state at the time of the alleged crime. In a courtroom drama that received national attention, Judge Dewey Arthur questioned the defense's tactics regarding a crucial mental health evaluation report. The judge expressed concern about the report's delayed submission, suggesting it might have been a strategic maneuver to gain an advantage on the trial. The defense attorneys, Bridget Todd and Kevin Camp, maintained the delay was unintentional. They emphasized the complexity of obtaining the report and assured the court that they would share it with the prosecution as soon as it was finalized. Judge Arthur, however, remained skeptical. He warned that withholding the report could be seen as a deliberate attempt to manipulate the trial proceedings. He stressed the importance of transparency and fairness in the legal process. As the case progressed, the focus shifted on the mental health evaluations conducted on Carly. Dr. Amanda Gugliano, the psychologist who assessed Carly's competency, testified that medication changes in the months leading up to the incident could have influenced her mental state. However, Dr. Gugliano acknowledged her expertise did not extend to the potential side effects or impact of these medications. The defense team, recognizing the limitations of Dr. Gugliano's evaluation, contracted another doctor, Dr. Mark Webb, to conduct a comprehensive mental health assessment. The defense intended to present Dr. Webb's finding as evidence in court. The case of Carly Gregg continued as the date of the trial approached. On September 10, 6 days before the trial, a motion was put forward in front of the defense in an attempt to exclude a crucial piece of evidence, a urine test administered upon her admission to the detention center. The defense argued that the test was conducted without proper authorization and should be deemed inadmissible. Prosecutors countered this very test was necessary for safety purposes and that Gregg had voluntarily admitted to using marijuana. They argued that the evidence of marijuana use was relevant to Gregg's potential mental state at the time of the crime. Judge Dewey Arthur, after careful consideration, ruled in favor of the prosecution, denying the defense's motion to surpass the drug test. The judge found the search to be reasonable based on the circumstances and the potential risks involved. In a separate development, the judge issued a gag order prohibiting Gregg's attorneys from speaking to the media about the case. This decision came in response to the allegations that the defense had violated procedural rules by commenting on facts of the case. The first day of the Carly Gregg murder trial unfolded in a somber courtroom atmosphere. Prosecution presented evidence, including a 911 call recording and body cam footage of the day of the shooting. Carly Gregg, now 15, was accused of murdering her mother Ashley Smiley and attempting to murder her stepfather Heath Smiley on March 9. The trial began with the testimony of Rankin County dispatcher Kevin Collins, who played the 911 call made by Heath Smiley. In the recording, Heath could be heard sounding hysterical and frantic, describing the shooting and the tragic discovery of his wife's body. The prosecution then presented body cam footage from Rankin County Patrol Deputy Hunter Lewis, who arrived at the scene. The footage captured the chaos of the situation as Heath Smiley, visibly distraught, informed the deputy of the shooting in the location of his deceased wife. The jury watched as the body cam footage revealed the tragic scene inside the home, where Ashley Smiley lay lifeless. The footage provided a stark visual of the aftermath of the crime. During opening statements, the prosecution painted a picture of Carly Gregg's secret life, including her relationship with a boyfriend, her use of social media, and her self-harm. They alleged that on the day of the shooting, Carly had an altercation with a friend at school, and that her mother had discovered her vape pens in her bedroom. The prosecution argued that Carly had shot her mother with a .357 Magnum gun, and she was concealing behind her back. They presented evidence supporting their claims, including ballistic evidence and gunshot residue found on Carly's hands. The defense, however, painted a different perspective. They argued that Carly loved her mother and was a good student. They suggested that Carly might have been terrified and confused when her stepfather returned home, leading to tragic events. The trial continued with the aim of uncovering the truth behind the tragic murder of Ashley Smiley. As the evidence unfolded, the jury faced the difficult task of determining Carly Gregg's guilt or innocence. What would you do if you were a juror in this case? How would you weigh the evidence and determine Carly's fate? The second day of the Carly Gregg murder trial delved deeper into the events surrounding the tragic incident. Heath Smiley, Carly's stepfather, took the stand to provide his account of the day. Heath described his positive relationship with Carly and his admiration for Ashley as a mother. He recounted the morning of the shooting as normal, with no apparent signs of distress from Carly. Heath detailed the moments leading up to the shooting, including receiving a text message from Ashley and arriving home. He described the chaos of the situation when he opened the door and was confronted with the gun. Heath recounted the struggle to disarm Carly and the subsequent gunshots. He described Carly as appearing scared and hysterical after the shooting. Heath also testified to searching the house for an intruder, but found none. Friends of Carly testified about her character and changes in her behavior. They described her as a good girl with no history of violence, but noticed increasing drug use and concerning statements about harming her parents. One friend, BW, recounted the conversation with Carly after the shooting. She was the friend who came over when Carly had asked for help after shooting her mother. BW also told the court that Carly had allegedly admitted to shooting her mother and expressed a desire to harm her stepfather. BW also testified hearing gunshots after she ran into the backyard, traumatized by Carly's confession of killing her own mother. The trial also explored Carly's relationship with her biological father, Kevin Gregg. Heath testified that Kevin had a history of drug use and that his presence in Carly's life had caused concern. He mentioned specific instances where Kevin's behavior had negatively impacted Carly, like forcing her to drink at such a young age. The defense used the biological father as a means to divert the attention from the murder as being a deliberate act and instead a haphazard mishap due to Carly's volatile mental health. Defense also continued to present their case, emphasizing Carly's mental health issues and her love of her mother. They argued that the tragic events were a result of her mental state rather than a deliberate act of violence. The third day of the Carly Gregg murder trial delved deeper into the complexities of the case. The defense presented a comprehensive picture of Carly's mental health history, drawing from medical records, school records, journal entries, and a sketchbook. Dr. Andrew Clark, a renowned child and adolescent psychiatrist, testified as an expert witness as part of the defense's witnesses. He diagnosed Carly with bipolar II disorder, a condition characterized by fluctuating moods and periods of mania or depression. Dr. Clark presented detailed evidence from Carly's medical records, highlighting her long-standing struggles with depression and anxiety. He discussed specific incidents of self-harm and concerning behavior that dated back several years. The analysis of Carly's journal entries and sketchbook revealed a darker side of her mental state. Dr. Clark read aloud excerpts that expressed feelings of despair, hopelessness, and aggression. The entries provided insights into Carly's inner turmoil and potential struggles with intrusive thoughts. The defense argued that Carly's mental health issues, combined with the stressors in her life, created a perfect storm that led to her violent actions. They emphasized her difficult childhood, including the loss of a sister and her parents' divorce. The prosecution, however, challenged Dr. Andrew Clark's assessment. They questioned the reliability of Carly's self-reported symptoms and argued that she was capable of understanding the difference between right and wrong at the time of the crimes. Carly's relationship with her biological father was once again at hand on the third day too. Heath Smiley, Carly's stepfather, had previously testified about Kevin's history of drug use and its negative impact on Carly. The defense presented evidence suggesting that Carly's relationship with Kevin was strained and she experienced emotional trauma as a result of his behavior. This information further supported the argument that Carly's mental health was influenced by her family dynamics. As the trial progressed, the jury faced the complex task of weighing the evidence and determining Carly Gregg's guilt or innocence. Nonetheless, the details provided on the third day provided a more comprehensive understanding of Carly's mental health struggles and the potential impact they had on her actions. The fourth day of the Carly Gregg murder trial featured testimonies from rebuttal witnesses called by the state. These witnesses aimed to counter the defense's expert testimony regarding Carly's mental state. First up was Olivia Labor, a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. She first met with Carly in January 2024, conducting a comprehensive evaluation. She testified that during her initial assessment and throughout the sessions she had with Carly, Carly explicitly denied hearing voices. It was also Labor who had prescribed medication changes to address Carly's depression and anxiety. As per Labor's testimony, despite the medication changes, Carly did not report any hallucinations or delusions during subsequent sessions. The next witness to come in front of the jury was Rebecca Kirk, a licensed professional counselor. She had met with Carly for counseling on 9 different occasions prior to the tragic events of the 19th of March. She testified that throughout their sessions, Carly did not express any suicidal or homicidal tendencies or thoughts. She also emphasized that depression and anxiety were common among her clients, suggesting that Carly's symptoms were not unusual. Last to testify against the jury on the fourth day was Dr. Jason Pickett, a forensic psychiatrist. He had been in charge of assessing Carly's mental state against the legal criteria for insanity in Mississippi. He analyzed various types of evidence, including Carly's journal entries, statements, and circumstances surrounding the case. Based on his analysis, Dr. Pickett told the court that Carly understood the nature and wrongfulness of her actions at the time of the incident. Another analysis of Dr. Pickett, which he incurred after analyzing both Carly's writings and statements, was that some of them were theatrical and others were concerning. It was Dr. Pickett who further emphasized in front of the court that the low dosage of Lexapro, which Carly had been switched to recently, could not be the reason for Carly Gregg to commit those alleged atrocities she did on the fateful day of March 19, 2024. Hence, the state's expert witnesses provided accounts that differed significantly from the testimonies of the defense's expert, Dr. Andrew Clark. Dr. Clark had previously testified that Carly was experiencing a mental health crisis at the time of the shooting. He cited her struggles with mood swings, eating disorders, self-harm, and hearing voices as evidence of her deteriorating mental state. The morning of the fifth day of Carly Gregg's murder trial marked a significant moment in the case. The jury, having deliberated throughout the previous day, was set to deliver their verdict. As the courtroom fell silent, the judge announced the jury's decision. In a solemn tone, he declared Carly Gregg guilty of all 3 charges: murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. Following the verdict, the jury turned their attention to the sentencing phase of the trial. They would now determine the appropriate punishment for Carly Gregg based on the evidence presented and the severity of her crimes. The judge, considering the severity of the crimes and the evidence presented, sentenced Carly Gregg to life in prison without parole for the murder of her mother and attempted murder of her stepfather. Additionally, Gregg was sentenced to 10 years in prison for tampering with evidence. However, the judge ruled that that sentence would run concurrently, meaning that Carly Gregg would serve a total to life in prison. The courtroom was filled with emotions as the sentence was announced. Carly Gregg, overcome with grief and despair, broke down in tears. Her family members, including Heath Smiley, Ashley Smiley's parents, and other relatives, also expressed their emotions. Before the jury could deliver their final verdict on the sentencing, the prosecution and defense presented their final arguments. Prosecutor Catherine Newman argued that Carly Gregg showed no remorse for her actions. Newman also emphasized that Carly understood the nature and consequences of her actions. She also presented evidence to support the claim that Gregg acted with premeditation and intent. On the other hand, the defense attorneys Bridget Todd and Kevin Camp pleaded for leniency, highlighting Gregg's mental health struggles. They also emphasized Gregg's love for her mother and her positive relationship with her stepfather. They also argued that Carly's actions were influenced by her mental health issues and that she may not have fully understood the consequences of her actions. The jury, composed of diverse members, deliberated for 2 long hours before reaching a unanimous verdict. Carly Grigg was found guilty on all 3 charges: murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. Carly Grigg was sentenced to life in prison without parole for killing her mother, attempting to kill her stepfather, and tampering with evidence. Both judge and jury were on the same page as they found her guilty of all 3 offenses and agreed upon the decided sentence. The judge did not show a slight bit of leniency, and he added the 10 concurrent years for evidence tampering. As for Carly, she's not done yet. Just a couple of weeks after the outcome of the initial trial, she's already seeking a new trial. Story 4. In December 2023, Nashville Metro Police arrested a man named Bryson Rivers on charges of aggravated kidnapping of his girlfriend, Lauren Johansson. The charges were filed by Lauren's father, Lance Johansson, who told the police that Rivers kept his daughter hostage and brutally beat her during their vacation in Tennessee. During Rivers' trial, Lance Johansson told the judge if the accused was ever released from jail, he would kill his daughter. Lauren Johansson was born on the 30th of October in 2021 in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. She was the oldest of the 4 children of Lance and Tamala Johansson. Both of Lauren's parents worked in the medical field, which made Lauren pursue a nursing career after high school. Lauren wasn't only a bright student, but also actively participated in social work, like volunteering at animal shelters. During high school, Lauren Johansson started dating a star football player of her school, Bryson Rivers. The relationship continued even after the school ended, and continued for nearly 5 years. However, Lauren and Bryson weren't a normal couple, as their relationship was marked by trouble and toxicity from the very start. This was mainly because of behavioral issues with Bryson Rivers. People close to the 2 high school sweethearts noticed that Bryson often found it hard to regulate his emotions. He regularly got angry outbursts, which led to frequent arguments with his girlfriend. Bryson was controlling and possessive, and wanted to govern every aspect of Lauren's life. His ideal image of their relationship was that Lauren was completely isolated from her friends and family. But that wasn't it. Bryson blamed Lauren for his emotional instability, and gradually made her believe that his emotional state was her responsibility. Lauren was brainwashed by her boyfriend to the extent that she always went back to him regardless of how abusive or toxic their relationship became. After high school, Lauren Johansson went to the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg to study nursing. In 2023, while in college, Lauren met Nick Bell, a 24-year-old Army aviation veteran who was also studying nursing in the same college and lived next door to Lauren. Contrary to Bryson's toxicity, Nick offered Lauren safety and protection. She gradually opened up to Nick about Bryson and his toxic tendencies. Nick later told the media that once after a trip, Lauren asked him to check if the house was safe. Upon searching, Nick found Bryson hiding underneath Lauren's bed. Not only this, Bryson had nailed all the doors shut so Lauren couldn't leave when she was in. Although Bryson left the house at that time, he didn't stop stalking Lauren and her new boyfriend. As time passed, the love between Lauren and Nick grew, and in August 2023, he asked Lauren to marry him while the couple were on vacation in Miami. Lauren seemed to have finally found a partner who valued and truly loved her, but it soon ended when Bryson Rivers made his way back into her life. After getting back together, Lauren and Bryson took a trip to Tennessee in December 2023. During an outing to a local bar, Bryson accused Lauren of having sex with one of the bartenders. Bryson forcefully got Lauren into the car, drove to a deserted parking lot, and viciously beat her to the point that she almost lost consciousness. He even choked her and threatened that if she tried to leave the car or call for help, she wasn't going to wake up the next morning. While beating her, Bryson told Lauren that he had scheduled marriage counseling for the couple and was extremely furious that she made out with the bartender, which Lauren continuously denied. He even told Lauren that he was going to kill himself after he was done beating her. When the police arrived in the parking lot, they found a car with fogged windows, with Lauren banging on the passenger side window for help. Bryson had beaten Lauren to the extent that she was completely covered in blood when one of the officers opened the car door. Lauren's injuries were so serious that she had to be hospitalized for 2 days. Bryson, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had happened at all. When he was being arrested, he calmly asked the police officers the reason for his arrest, despite knowing very well that he had just physically assaulted his girlfriend with rocks and a pistol. Bryson Rivers was arrested and taken to a Nashville jail. As for Lauren Johansson, she visited a domestic violence center. Lauren told the authorities that although she carried a gun with her and it was in her bag on the back seat of the car, Bryson Rivers forcefully prevented her from reaching the gun. Her official statement also said the car was in the parking lot for nearly an hour, and she blew up the horn every time a vehicle passed in hopes that someone would come to her rescue. She also told the authorities that Bryson held his forearm against her throat until she got dizzy. A few days after the incident, Lauren accepted a phone call from Bryson and later told the police that she did not want to press charges against her boyfriend. Bryson had once again gotten into Lauren's head and persuaded her to tell the court that she had got injured because she was drunk and hit her head against the car windows. He also told her that he wanted to get back together and hinted at joining the military after getting out of jail. This was to convince Lauren that there was still hope in their relationship and that military service would straighten him and help him with his anger issues. However, Lauren told Bryson that she'd already given her statement to the authorities and given the circumstances, it was likely that the police would take what she initially said as her official statement. When Lauren expressed her desire not to press charges against her abusive boyfriend, the police told her that they had enough evidence to pursue a case against Bryson on their own. Bryson Rivers was charged with aggravated kidnapping, aggravated stalking, and witness coercion, but this wasn't enough to compel Lauren to stay away from her toxic boyfriend. Later in an interview, Lance Johansson told the media that he never got positive signs from his daughter's relationship with Bryson Rivers, but didn't interfere and respected Lauren's decision. He also shared that after finding out about the true extent of abuse inflicted by Bryson on his daughter, he repeatedly warned Lauren about staying away from her toxic boyfriend. But whenever she did so, Bryson found a way to manipulate her and get back into her life. On Monday, the 18th of December 2023, a preliminary hearing set Bryson's bond at $251,000. Lance Johansson was present at the hearing and told the judge that if Rivers was ever released, it was likely that he would kill his daughter. He told the court that this wasn't the first time Bryson had physically assaulted his daughter, and while the family would get Lauren away from Bryson for a while, he always found a way to get back to her and again abused her physically. On March 13, 2024, Bryson Rivers filed a motion in Nashville court, requesting that his bond be reduced. While the Nashville District Attorney's Office strongly opposed the bond reduction request, Judge Cheryl Blackburn approved Bryson's request and reduced his bond from $251,000 to $150,000 on the 3rd of April 2024. What's even more shocking was that the judge reviewed the 11-minute audio from December 2023, when Bryson viciously beat Lauren Johansson. The police also told the court that Lauren had changed her statement after talking to Bryson over the phone, but despite compelling evidence against the accused, the judge reduced the bond. In her new statement, Laura had told the authorities that Bryson Rivers did not assault her and the blood on her body was because she hit herself against the car windows. She even said that it was in fact her who tried to injure Bryson. While Bryson Rivers' bond was reduced, the court's decision came with certain conditions too. For example, he wasn't allowed to leave Davidson County, Tennessee. He also had to be fitted with a GPS monitor after posting. The order also noted Bryson should be released before 4 p.m., so there was enough time for him to get the GPS tracker company's office and get fitted for his GPS tracker. On May 15, 2024, a motion was filed by Bryson Rivers and his mother to change the conditions of his release so he could go live with his family in Mississippi while a trial date was set. The judge denied this request, and a company named Elite Bonding was approved by the court to post Bryson's bond on the 4th of June 2024. However, the company's owner decided against following the case because he wasn't sure how Bryson was going to live without his family. On the same day, Bryson's assigned parole officer sent a copy of the court order to Tracking Solutions, the GPS tracker company, about Bryson's bond conditions. Bryson's lawyer requested that an email should be sent to the district attorney's office so that the appropriate address for exclusion could be retrieved. An address was also provided to the court by Bryson's attorney where he would be living while waiting for his trial. The court approved two different bond companies, On Time Bail Bonding and Brooks Bail Bonding, to post Bryson's bail. Both these companies were to put up $75,000 each. They were required to come to the court and sign the order concerning Bryson Rivers' bail. The court order was 2 pages long and specified all the bonding conditions, including who will pay how much for the bail. The first page of the order dictated that Tracking Solutions, the GPS monitoring company, would fit the GPS monitor on Bryson Rivers. However, it was later revealed that the employee of Brooks Bonding, one of the bond companies, was shown only the second page of the court's order, and therefore the company didn't know that Rivers was to be taken to Tracking Solutions to get a GPS monitor fit on him. After completing all the legal formalities, Bryson Rivers was released on bond from Maximum Correctional Center on Harding Place on Monday, June 24, 2024. Despite one of the bail conditions stating that he'd be released before 4 p.m., Bryson was released at 4:05 p.m. Not only this, the office of the Davidson County Chief Deputy Criminal Court Clerk Julius Sloss also made a mistake when it came to sharing information on the conditions of Bryson's release. The bonding company in the bail also wasn't aware of the full release conditions because they weren't handed over by the clerk's office. The clerk would later claim that knowing the bail conditions is the bonding company's responsibility, and a bonding company should always know beforehand what is being signed. The Chief Deputy Criminal Court Clerk also added that it wasn't the clerk's office's responsibility to make the officials from the bond companies read official documents because people from the bond companies are used to seeing such documents all the time. In Rivers' situation, the accused would normally be released in the custody of a bonding agent. However, because of incomplete information and ineffective communication, Bryson was released from the correctional center on his own. But that wasn't the only mistake the authorities made that day. When a bonding agent finally picked up Bryson Rivers later that day, instead of taking him to Tracking Solutions, the company responsible for fitting a GPS tracker on him, he was taken to the wrong GPS monitoring company. The new monitoring company, Freedom Monitoring Services, was established just 7 days before Bryson Rivers' release, and didn't know his full release conditions. This is the reason the company did not know that the court had banned Rivers from traveling outside of Davidson County. But when they became aware of the condition, several days had already passed, and Bryson Rivers had already left Tennessee. While Freedom Monitoring Service did ask Bryson about the location he would be living in Mississippi, they didn't know the address he gave them was, in fact, Lauren Johansson's. Bryson didn't come back to Tennessee until 5 days later on June 29, 2004, because he was told by the GPS monitoring company that there was an issue with the GPS monitor, and he immediately needed to report to the company's office in Nashville. However, he didn't stay in Nashville for long and once again disappeared. He had a hearing at Davidson County courtroom scheduled for the 2nd of July 2024, but he never showed up to the courts. Moreover, the battery on his GPS tracker also started dying by this point, and the GPS monitoring company last tracked him in Biloxi, Mississippi. When the Freedom Monitoring Services contacted Bryson Rivers' mother about his whereabouts, she told him that she hadn't seen her son recently and didn't know where he was. The authorities, including the GPS tracking company and the bond agents, tried to contact Bryson Rivers. However, they couldn't reach him. In the light of the evidence that Bryson Rivers had been in Mississippi despite being ordered to not leave Davidson County, the court issued an arrest warrant for him. Meanwhile, on June 28, 2024, Lauren's father, Lance Johansson, received a voicemail from the Nashville District Attorney's Office informing him about Bryson Rivers' release and also cautioned him about keeping his daughter safe. This is Bailey calling from the District Attorney's Office in Nashville. Bryson Rivers was released from custody. He was supposed to report straight to the GPS company and be put on a GPS monitor, and he was not to leave Davidson County. But as soon as he was released, he did not report to that GPS monitoring company and has not been heard from. I wanted to make sure Lauren is safe. Lance Johansson didn't hear the voicemail until the 1st of July. As soon as he came to know about the situation, he texted his daughter about her well-being. Although he did get a response from Lauren, Lance Johansson later revealed that the text didn't sound like his daughter and something seemed off. The whole situation came across as a surprise to Lance because, firstly, he was given every assurance that Bryce Rivers would not be released from jail and that Lauren was safe. Secondly, when Bryson was released, Lance didn't know about it for as long as a week. To keep their daughter and other children safe, Lance and Tamala had everyone install the Life 360 app on their cell phones. This app kept all the family members updated about each other's locations and status. On the 2nd of July 2024 at 4 a.m., Lance Johansson received a notification on his cell phone informing him that Lauren's Life 360 app had been turned off. At the time of the incident, Lauren was living with her sister in Hattiesburg. The sister also told her father that when she woke up in the morning, Lauren was gone and the front door of the house was open. Not only this, someone had ripped off the security camera of the house too. Upon knowing that his daughter was missing, Lance Johansson immediately contacted Hattiesburg police and informed them about the situation. When he went to the police station to get an update on the situation, he was shocked to find out the police hadn't done anything to track Lauren. The authorities kept delaying any action on the matter until 3 p.m. on Wednesday, the 3rd of July, when Lance insisted that they should try to locate Lauren's car. The police used OnStar, a vehicle safety feature, to track Lauren's car. The tracking pinged in the Gulfport area of Harrison County, roughly 90 minutes away from where Lauren was living. The authorities contacted Lance Johansson and informed him about where his daughter's car had been located. Without wasting any time, Lance drove to the location right away. On July 3, 2024, the police found Lauren Johansson's car in Wolf River Cemetery, with Lauren lying dead on the back seat of the car. What was even more shocking to both the law enforcement officials and Lance Johansson was that Lauren's body was wrapped up in sheets and trash bags. It was clear that she had been beaten to death because her face was smashed in, her eyes were swollen to the extent that she couldn't see anything at the time of her death, and her head had multiple holes in it. The whole body was horrifically mutilated. Lauren had been beaten so viciously that her face and skull became fractured from the rest of her body. When the law enforcement agencies arrived at the scene, a male figure left Lauren's car and ran into the woods nearby. With more than 50 officers, drones, dogs, a helicopter, and other search methods, the police began searching for the man. After more than 6 hours of manhunt, the law enforcement agencies were finally able to get hold of Bryson Rivers and arrest him. Through text messages, the police were able to convince Bryson that he was talking to a friend who was there to get him to a safe location. As soon as Rivers reached the agreed-upon location to be rescued by a supposed friend, he was arrested by police. It was later revealed that both the GPS tracking company and the bond company didn't realize the gravity of the situation until July 1, 2024, when they repeatedly called Bryson Rivers and tried to tell him that he was in violation of his bond terms, and he immediately needed to get back to Nashville or his bond would be revoked. Bryson Rivers finally returned his tracking company's call around midnight, but he told them that he wasn't going to show up for the hearing, and that is exactly what happened. New evidence in the case also revealed that Lauren Johnson was killed by Bryson Rivers in Forest County and not Harrison County, where she was living at the of her murder. After finding new evidence in the case and establishing that the crime was committed in Forest County, Bryson Rivers was handed over to the Forest County Police Department. After being relocated from Harrison County, Bryson Rivers made his first court appearance in Forest County Court on the 26th of July 2024. In addition to the charges he was facing in relation to his physical assault of Lauren Johansson in December 2023, new charges were added to his case. These included first-degree murder and denial of his bond. He was also charged with tampering with evidence and grand larceny. The prosecutors told the court that they believed that Lauren Johansson was killed by Bryson Rivers near her residence in Forest County and that her body was moved across the county lines to Harrison County. The preliminary trial date of Bryson Rivers was set for 1:30 p.m. on the 31st of July at the Gulfport Justice Court in Harrison County, and his bond was set at $1 million. On August 23, 2024, Bryson Rivers appeared in the court of Judge Gay Polk Payton, and his lawyer requested for a bond. However, the request was denied. Daniel Benoit, investigator for the Forest County Sheriff's Department, gave an update about the investigation and shared important updates. According to Benoit, his department found video footage from the week when Bryson Rivers was released on bond. The footage showed that Lauren Johansson and Bryson Rivers voluntarily visited a hotel together. The phone records submitted to the court showed that on the 2nd of July, Bryson Rivers tried to contact Lauren Johansson 126 times. Benoit told the court that Bryson consistently asked Lauren about her whereabouts. However, she never responded to her calls or messages. Between July 1st and July 2nd, Bryson Rivers also visited his mother's house in McHenry. According to the Forest Police Department, on July 2nd at 2:15 a.m., he sent a message to his friend and asked him to drive him to Hattiesburg. Security cameras in the neighborhood where Lauren Johansson was living in Hattiesburg spotted Bryson Rivers in the early morning hours of the 2nd of July. Due to the recent events, Lauren Johansson had installed 11 cameras at her residence. However, when she went missing and the police officers searched her home, they found that 5 of the cameras were stolen. Rivers was captured in the security cameras at 3:58 a.m. and could be seen heading towards Lauren's house. At the time, there were 3 people in the house, which included Lauren Johansson herself, her sister, and a friend named J.C. Wilson. Lance Johansson told the media that Lauren had likely called J.C. Wilson to her house for her protection because he had already told her daughter that Bryson Rivers was out of jail and she should be safe. Security footage showed Bryson Rivers walking from Lauren's house around 5:11 a.m. for a brief moment before running back in. When Rivers left the house for the second time, he wasn't wearing a shirt. Lauren Johansson's car left her house at 5:51 a.m., with the police believing that Lauren was alive at the time. The GPS data showed that Bryson drove around Hattiesburg, but he didn't take direct routes. During this time, several traffic cameras captured the car on the road, but he was the only person seen inside the vehicle. Bryson Rivers first drove downtown, then to Chain Park. He then went to Petal River Park and stayed there for 32 minutes. On October 9, 2024, a 6-judge panel declared that the bond companies that were responsible for bailing Bryson Rivers out of the correctional facility made serious errors. Although the court declared that the bond companies didn't break any laws, it did say that there were multiple cases of negligence by multiple parties involved in the Bryson Rivers case that eventually led to the death of Lauren Johansson. Bryson Rivers remains in Forest County Police Department's custody while a grand jury hears his case and decides his fate. Story 5. Growing up in a loving family, pursuing dreams, and becoming a role model in her community is something many young girls aspire to. Ashley Doolittle was no different. Born on May 20, 1998 in Louisville, Colorado, she was a bright and energetic girl who found her passion for horses at just 5 years old. Her love for horseback riding became her identity, which led her to the rodeo world. By the age of 18, she was crowned lady-in-waiting, one step away from becoming a rodeo queen. She had her eyes set on promising college life ahead as well. But what seemed like the perfect life would soon be shattered by a tragedy that no one saw coming. A tragedy that would destroy not one but 2 families. On the evening of June 9, 2016, a seemingly ordinary day for 18-year-old Ashley Doolittle took a horrifying turn. Ashley, a beloved figure in her community and aspiring rodeo queen, had planned a meet-up with her ex-boyfriend, Tanner Flores. The Lon Hagler Reservoir was the location the couple had agreed to meet and discuss their troubled relationship. Ashley, not knowing what fate had in store for her, entered Tanner's truck. What started out as a conversation about a relationship would soon take a horrific turn, one that no one in Colorado, even in their worst nightmare, would have imagined. A cold-blooded murder of a teenage girl who was once a symbol of positivity and hope in her community. Ashley Doolittle was born on May 20, 1998 in Louisville, Colorado to Marie and Jeff. From a very young age, she was known to have a type of energy and aura about her that drew others closer. She had 2 brothers, Brandon and Michael, and was fortunate enough to have grown up in a family that always loved her and prioritized her dreams. Ashley, by the age of just 5, had her very first pony, and from that day forward, she never looked back on anything else. Her passion for horseback riding was truly immense and fostered at a very young age as well. It was something that really became a part of her identity. She had a profound love for horses and developed a sense of community early on, which is what gave her a purpose in life. A few years later, at the age of just 8, she began to ride in horse shows and completely fell in love with the rodeo community and lifestyle. She was involved in rodeo activities all the time and had some profound achievements to her name. In 2016, when Ashley was around 18 years old, she was crowned lady-in-waiting. The title holds prestige value in the rodeo community and was given to someone who would work alongside the rodeo queen to truly embody the spirit. It comes with a lot of different responsibilities that include things like planning fundraisers, helping prepare sponsors, attending community events, learning to be an event spokesperson, and much more. Having received such a title was a huge honor for her, and it meant that she was only a year away from becoming rodeo queen herself. She became quite well known for her commitment to the rodeo community and was seen as a role model by many teenage girls who aspired to be just like her. Oftentimes, young girls would come up to her and ask for her autograph, shedding some light on her character. Ashley was the type of person who would write a personal note to each person who came up for an autograph. It was a sweet and caring gesture, and in the note, she would encourage the reader to keep pursuing their dreams. Apart from this, Ashley was also an active part of the Boulder County 4-Horse program, which seeks to encourage young children to get involved in the horseback riding community. She also competed on lots of horse judging and hippology teams, used to ride in horse bows, and was even named the champion high individual in the National 4-H Western Roundup. But this wasn't the sum of her ambitions. Ashley was also a founding member and a 2-time vice president of the Thomas Valley FFA. The Future Farmers of America, FFA, was an Incur student organization catering to the interests of those who wanted to be involved in agriculture and leadership. Ashley had quite a lot going on for her during her time and wanted to pursue the FFA at the state level when she started college. She graduated from Berthet High in May of 2016 and had plans to attend Colorado State University. There, she would major in agriculture business. She had her eyes set on the next chapter in life and didn't know that it would not begin. Her life was ripped to shreds by one person who decided that if he couldn't have her, then the world wouldn't either. That one person was Tanner Flores. Ashley had met Tanner back in high school and both of them were in a relationship that appeared to be normal to the outside world. Think of it like a typical teenage romance. However, the young couple did have their troubles. Tanner was said to be very controlling of Ashley, controlling to a point where he dictated what she could and couldn't do. He even forbade her from attending parties at college, which didn't make much sense since Ashley was not known for being the party type anyway. So, was he just jealous of her achievements? Did he want to keep her all to himself? Was he insecure that he'd lose her to someone better? Regardless of what he felt, he always took these personal issues or concerns out on Ashley in different ways, who was fed up with all this. After a year into the relationship, she knew that Tanner wasn't right for her and decided to break up with him. The decision, as it turns out, was not so straightforward for Tanner. On June 4, 2016, Tanner requested that he and Ashley go on a hike in Estes Park and discuss their relationship. He probably didn't understand what it meant to have a discussion because even though Ashley had broken up, he thought the discussion went great and the two were back together. He either didn't get the message or didn't want to accept it. The following day, Ashley had gone out with some friends to the Sundance Steakhouse and Saloon and Tanner showed up there as well. Witnesses at the location say that Tanner at some point grabbed her, twirled her around in his direction and attempted to talk with her. However, Ashley was so fed up by all this and wanted nothing to do with Tanner. She ended up leaving the location, but the next day, Tanner convinced her to meet him again at Lon Hagler Reservoir so the two could talk. By the time the conversation ended, Tanner somehow thought they were back together even though Ashley had stated that they weren't. The day after that, Ashley went back to the Sundance Steakhouse and Saloon. This time she even reached out to Tanner and told him not to come because she didn't want to see him again. Tanner, however, came up with a lie claiming his keys were locked inside his truck and he needed Ashley to come pick him up, but Ashley just ignored this message. 4 days after the hike, on June 8th, Ashley agreed to go and sell some scrap metal with Tanner. At the time, she didn't know this would mark the initiation of a horrific life event. That day, Tanner ended up going through her phone and found that she'd been texting 2 other guys. He thought Ashley was flirting with the other guys and accused her of cheating. At the time, both Ashley and Tanner had not gotten back together. Later that night, Tanner contacted the 2 guys and made Ashley really angry. Then Tanner texted Ashley the following message: "I hope you realize what you threw away. I gave you everything and spent so much money on you. You were too busy trying to fuck Tori and Jared behind my back. You were nothing near loyal. I'm going to do something stupid now. But..." Ashley actually responded, trying to defend herself, and up until this point she wanted to remain friends with him, but things had gotten a bit too far. The next day, Tanner again messaged Ashley, asking if the 2 of them could meet up and talk. She told him that she had been in Denver that morning, but she would be able to meet him later in the day. While Ashley was in Denver, Tanner borrowed his dad's pistol and went to shoot at Carter Lake, claiming that it would help him decompress. He continued to text Ashley throughout the day, and in one of the texts he even stated he missed her. Ashley was so annoyed by all of this that she ended up texting him, "Stop." But she had agreed to meet him later in the day, simply because she didn't like being a rude or unkind person. During the afternoon of June 9th, both of them got together at the Lon Hagler Reservoir, where Ashley went inside Tanner's truck. Little did she know it would be the last thing she ever did. At around 7:30 p.m., her parents went out to look for her because she hadn't come home by that time. 30 minutes later, at 8 p.m., they found her car in one of the parking spaces at the reservoir. Both Jeff and Marie were certain that Ashley would have texted them if she was planning to be late. Given this, they came to the conclusion that something wasn't right, and immediately called the sheriff's office and reported her missing. Local authorities were quick to jump in on the action and initiate search efforts. They began calling Ashley's friends and family members to gather any information they could. During their efforts, one thing that stood out the most was that everyone kept mentioning the name Tanner. The authorities soon learned that Tanner and Ashley were in a relationship and had a breakup. They were made aware of Tanner's distraught over the separation, and one person even told them that Tanner had posted something on Snapchat that made him believe that he was suicidal. Other people the authorities spoke to told them that they had never seen Tanner so depressed. Soon after, Tanner's father came forward and told the officers that his .22 caliber revolver was missing from a locked gun safe, and Tanner knew where the key was. A be on the lookout was issued for Tanner's truck. Officers all around Colorado were put on alert, and the search efforts were at peak by that time. The efforts concluded at 8 a.m. the following morning, and Tanner's location had been identified. Authorities had received a call during which they were told that the truck was seen on his deceased grandfather's property in Coal Barn, Colorado. The location was on the other side of the state, and around 5 hours away from where those involved in the entire event resided. It was later revealed that Tanner's grandmother had called a neighbor to confirm if the truck was indeed on the property, and upon confirmation, reported it to law enforcement. Given the distance of the location, assembling a team to make an arrest would take some time, so the authorities decided to have a wildlife ranger go to the property to keep an eye on Tanner so he couldn't escape. While Tanner did not make any attempts to flee the location, he did do some other things that could be described as very disturbing. The neighbor whom Tanner's grandmother had called and the wildlife ranger watched as Tanner began throwing rags soaked with blood into a nearby field. He also moved a roll-up mat into a woodpile behind the house, and what they saw next was utterly horrific. Tanner came out of the house with a heavy blanket and put it on the back seat of his truck. The blanket appeared to be quite heavy for him to carry. Sticking outside of it was a human arm, but this time it was pretty clear what Tanner had done and might have gotten away with too. But luckily an arrest was made later that morning. The sheriff's deputies, CBI agents, and members of 3 additional law enforcements made it to the property. They made the arrest without any incidents at the property, and when they went to Tanner's truck and opened up the blanket he had placed on the back seat, it was the corpse of Ashley Marie Doolittle. At this point, no life-saving measures could have been taken, and everyone's worst nightmare had turned into a reality. Tanner initially told the officers that the two of them were discussing their relationship in his truck, and Ashley was the one who lost control. Tanner's initial story was that Ashley grabbed the gun and pointed it at her head. He said that he tried to wrestle the gun away from her, but during the struggle it went off and she was shot. He went on to say that he shot her 2 times after to end her pain and suffering because the first shot didn't kill her. After hearing this, the officer told him that he was not buying any of it, and after a few minutes Tanner came clean. Since Ashley was dead by that time, the only details that could be delivered were to come from Tanner. He told the officer that he and Ashley had got together at Long Hagler Reservoir, and from there they drove west towards Carter Lake. This is the same lake Tanner had visited earlier in the day to practice shooting. According to Tanner, this is where they discussed their relationship. Ashley told him that she didn't want to patch things up with him, but would marry him later in life, and right now needs time to explore other relationships. After this conversation, they started to drive back to where Ashley's car was parked, and that's when things went south. He said that Ashley glared at him during the drive back and that's all it took. He reached into the back seat, grabbed the revolver and shot Ashley in the back of the head not once but twice. Tanner claims that she didn't die right away, which is why he had to shoot her a 3rd time. According to Tanner, the 3rd shot was intended to end her suffering. After that, he tried to clean her body as best he could and drove off to his deceased grandfather's property located at the other end of the state. Once he had given his statement, he was held in the Mesa County Jail without bail. Ashley's funeral took place on June 17th at St. John Evangelist Catholic Parish in Loveland, Colorado. Everyone at the ceremony, her family, friends, and other community members, totaling up to over 700, were all devastated by what happened. The teenage girl was once the reason for hope, happiness, and aspiration for the community, was now mourned. Her mother, Marie Doolittle, said that she didn't want her daughter to be remembered for the way she died, but for how she lived. She wanted Ashley's memory to be that of a full-of-life 18-year-old girl who accomplished so much and set herself up for her own success. The age of 18 is a strange time in life for many. During this age, it's often hard to figure out what you're really going to do with your life. Passion, profession, college. There's just so much going on that the sheer number of options can be overwhelming for anyone. But this wasn't the case for Ashley. The options weren't overwhelming for her at all. In fact, she achieved greatness in almost everything she took part in. That's just who she was. At an age when many are confused about their life, Ashley had it planned out. But who knew those plans would be cut short? From all who attended her funeral, she was described as fun, smiling, goofy, and down-to-earth. She was the lady-in-waiting to be the rodeo queen, and would have been queen next year. But during the upcoming season, she will now be remembered and memorialized. Ashley had done so much for the community, and the funeral was indeed an enormous one. But apart from the ceremony, a few other things also took place on that day. The FBI announced that it would be assisting Larimer County in the investigation, and would help with evidence and search and recovery. Tanner, who was previously held at Mesa County Jail, was also transferred to Larimer County Jail on the same day Ashley was being put to rest. The pursuit of justice for the Doolittle family was about to begin. On June 20th, Tanner made his first court appearance, and was charged with first-degree murder and second-degree kidnapping. The basis for the kidnapping charges was based on the presumed fact that Tanner didn't let Ashley get out of the truck when she wanted to. Grief, pain, suffering, and agony would all continue to be a part of daily life for the Doolittle family after Ashley was in her final resting place. The family would have to wait a year and a half until legal proceedings began. In October 2017, the trial officially began and the courtroom was filled with family and friends of both teens. It was clear to everyone that Tanner had killed Ashley. The only question that was to be answered was whether it was a premeditative act or not. The prosecution believed and argued that the killing was planned out. They claimed that Tanner had gone out to the lake earlier in the morning to test the revolver and find an isolated location to commit the murder, but this wasn't their only claim. The prosecution also mentioned that the revolver used for killing was a single-action firearm, meaning that the firing mechanism had to be manually reset after each shot. Given that Ashley was shot 3 times, the prosecution mentioned that the killing had to be one out of deliberation, not one out of the heat of the moment. The defense, however, argued that it wasn't a planned killing and that second-degree murder would be a fair charge. During the trial, Tanner took the stand, testified, and told the horrific details of the entire incident. In his testimony, he never denied what he did, but he fully denied that he had planned to do it. Some other details that weren't part of his initial statement upon arrest were also revealed. He told the court that he threw both their phones out of the truck after the murder. However, before throwing out Ashley's phone, he texted himself, pretending to be her. The texts mainly stated that both of them weren't together that afternoon and that Ashley was not going to meet him, but these details only looked like a failed attempt to distance himself and cover up his tracks. However, the next detail he revealed is one that shook everyone to their core. The night before he was arrested, he went to his deceased grandfather's property and broke the glass sliding door to gain access to the property. Once there, he cleaned up some of the blood, turned on the TV, and watched some cartoons before falling asleep. Yes, cartoons. How is it possible for one to love another so much they can't see them with anyone else, but still have the audacity to murder their beloved and watch TV afterward? This is a question that remains unanswered. At the end of the trial, both families had suffered an immense loss. They lost their children and the lives planned ahead. With that verdict came justice for Ashley, but also a dead end for Tanner. The pain either of the families experienced can only be described as unbearable. Justice had prevailed, but no one won the case in this bitter reality. 2 families were destroyed and ripped to shreds in the process, but the case shed light on a much bigger part of life: breakup violence. In the United States, 1.5 million high school students experience physical abuse from a dating partner on an annual basis, and 1 in 3 U.S. teens aged between 14 to 20 have been victims of dating violence. Despite this, 81% of parents believe that teen dating violence is not an issue. Marie and Jeff Doolittle recognized that not enough conversation was happening around a reality that took their daughter from them, and the reality that many other Ashleys would be living in the U.S. and other parts of the world. To combat this and raise awareness, Ashley's parents started the Ashley Doolittle Foundation. With this nonprofit organization, they aim to preserve the legacy of their daughter and wish to continue giving back to the community the way Ashley did. Today, the foundation aims to build awareness and prevent teen dating violence, give victims the opportunity to connect with the right support groups, launch programs in schools, and discuss the signs of dating violence with students and parents. Ashley's mother says that they started the foundation to keep her memory alive. Her exact words during the initial days of the foundation were, "We want some good to come out of this through the Ashley Doolittle Foundation, and try to prevent this from happening to other families so others don't have to go through what we went through." The case of Ashley Doolittle serves as a severe reminder of the dangers that bloom in teenage relationships. While not all relationships follow the trajectory of Tanner and Ashley, some still do. And it's important to understand that violence, be it physical, verbal, or even psychological, is not acceptable, and if ignored, it can lead to dire consequences similar to those Ashley had to suffer. Her killer, Tanner, on October 4, 2017, was found guilty of murder and second-degree kidnapping, and was sentenced to life in prison without parole and an additional 32 years.